brings happiness, joy, a little bit of sadness.
I formally apologize.
You see the elders, some of them crying because they went to boarding school themselves.
Federal Indian boarding school policy will always be a significant mark of shame on American.
So, a real quick historical lesson. History lesson. Did you guys know that there was an ancient race of white people that actually lived in North America before the Native Americans showed up? There's an ancient race of white people that were here first. And by the way, I have the proof. I know this. This is a fact. They're called the Wagas. They're called the Wagas. They're called the Wagas. And I know this is a fact. And you guys, some of you, by the way, some of you probably think I'm memeing, that I'm joking. I'm literally not. If you don't believe me, there's a book you should read. It's called Reminiscences of a Native Yurok Woman, written by Lucy Thompson, a.k.a. Chik Chik Wawa. Once again, I'm not kidding. Go read the book. Go read the book. Go read the book. And you'll see. You'll see.
History.
I went there. No native language to be spoken at the school. Or we get a paddle.
The school had a homemade electric chair.
One book proves it. I went to the homeland of the Wagas, and I saw, you don't even want to know what I saw. I have, chat, this guy's not ready. This guy's not ready for the Wagas conversation. This guy doesn't even know what the fuck you don't even know the can of worms that you are opening. You know what? Hey. Do you know who made this rock? If the Wagas don't exist, and there wasn't an ancient race of super white people living in North America predating the Native Americans, then who made the rock? Then who made this fucking rock, dumbass? Think about that. Yeah, you don't have an answer, do you?
Same thing happened to me.
They tried to let us forget our language, but we never did.
My grandparents have gone to boarding school. I went to college at a post-Indian boarding school on Indian School Road in Phoenix. And I'd like to think that my grandfather would still be here today if he was not a survivor of federal Indian boarding school. He did commit.
Oh.
And so this is a very deeply rooted issue.
One of the most horrific chapters in American history. You should be ashamed.
Hello, my name is Jake Frawa. I'm filling in for Andrew today. I am from the Pueblo of Jemez, a federally recognized tribe, and right now we are standing in Arizona. So Biden decided to come to the Gila River Indian community to apologize for the boarding school policies that the U.S. government implemented.
I'm heading to do something that should have been done a long time ago.
Tens of thousands of Native children were traumatized.
Why do they have a picture of a kangaroo? This is in America? Why do they have a picture of a kangaroo?
Abused, reprimanded, and even murdered to implement and assert assimilation.
More than 900 children died while in custody at these boarding schools.
It lasted for about 150 years, yet the after effects of that are still here.
But the federal government has never formally apologized until today.
Let's talk about the schools Biden's apologizing for. Okay. The primary goal of residential boarding schools, whose stated slogan was actually "Kill the Indian, Save the Man," was to cause Native children to assimilate into America.
Kill the Indian, save the man. Oh, it's like an indoctrination center.
American culture during westward expansion, a time during which the western frontier was rife with bloody conflict between colonial armies and tribes like the Lakota, Sioux, and Apache, who fought tooth and nail to protect their land. It was in territories that were seized by colonial armies that the boarding schools began. After the schools were built, the first generation of Native children were systematically separated from their families, shipped off, often hundreds of miles away, and placed into what are essentially cultural concentration camps, with the primary goal being linguicide, language death, the complete abolition of native tongues, which would stop children from being able to communicate with elders, thereby cutting off the transmission of oral history between generations.
Generations of native children stolen, taken away.
Dude, you know one of the craziest videos? Do you guys remember this movie scene? I'm going to play this real fast because it is very relevant. This scene is epic. It's crazy. Watch.
Sitting Bull requested this counsel. We await his words. Take your soldiers out of here. They scare the game away.
Adrian, thank you.
Very well, sir.
Thank you.
Tell me then, how far away should I take my men?
You must take them out of our lands.
What precisely are your lands?
These are the lands where my people lived before you whites first came.
I don't understand. We whites were not your first enemies. Why don't you demand back the land in Minnesota where the Chippewa and others forced you from years before?
The Black Hills are sacred land given to my people by Wakantonka.
Not very convenient to cloak your claims in spiritualism. And what would you say to the Mormons and others who believe that their God has given to them Indian lands in the West?
I would say they should listen to Wakantonka.
No matter what your legends say, you didn't sprout from the plains like the spring grasses, and you didn't coalesce out of the ether. You came out of the Minnesota woodlands, armed to the teeth, and set upon your fellow man. You massacred the Kiowa, the Omaha, the Ponca, the Oto, and the Pawnee without mercy. And yet you claim the Black Hills as a private preserve bequeathed to you by the Great Spirit.
And who gave us the guns and powder to kill our enemies? And who traded weapons to the Chippewa and others who drove us from our home?
Chief Sitting Bull, the proposition that you were a peaceable people before the appearance of the white man is the most fanciful legend of all. You were killing each other for hundreds of moons before the first white stepped foot on this continent. You conquered those tribes, lusting for their game and their lands, just as we have now conquered you for no less noble a cause.
This is your story of my people.
This is the truth, not legend.
Holy shit. I'm pretty sure, though, I didn't finish the movie. I think that they ended up living in peace and harmony forever and ever. I think that they were able to work out their problems and that nothing bad happened after that. I'm almost positive.
To places they didn't know, with people they never met, with spoken language they had never heard, their clothes taken off, their hair that they were told was sacred was chopped off, their name literally erased, replaced by a number.
Many kids at these schools, typically at the hands of missionaries, endured neglect, abuse, and torture. And much of the brutality administered by the schools came as a direct punishment for things like wearing traditional jewelry and, of course, uttering a word of a native language.
Children abused, emotionally, physically, and sexually abused, forced into hard labor. Some put up for adoption without the consent of their birth parents. Some left for dead in unmarked graves. And for those who did return home, they were wounded in body and in spirit.
The first school opened in 1879 in Pennsylvania, and by 1925, 83% of all school-age Native children were attending boarding schools, bringing the total number of enrollment to above 55,000 students, which gradually increased until 1978.
We have called these hearings today to begin to define the specific problems that American Indian families face in raising their children.
Following decades of activism by groups like the American Indian Movement and so forth, Congress passed the Indian Child Welfare Act, which gave Native American parents the right to refuse having their children enrolled in boarding schools. And almost as soon as this option was given, the vast majority of schools shut down due to lack of enrollment and were soon taken over by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That being said, survivors of these schools are still among us, mostly now in their mid-70s. Here's an interview we conducted several months ago at Paradise Valley Community College in Arizona with our friend Kenneth's grandma, who is an elder from the Navajo or Diné Nation and attended boarding schools in Arizona from kindergarten to 12th grade.
I went there.
What was the name of the school?
Cottonwood Day School. Donald Leifer from Los Angeles, that was the teacher there. And he was the one that told us no native language to be spoken at the school. They have to scrub us, our mouths with soap, or we get a paddle, or, you know, we kneel down on a rice. If we say something bad in Navajo, not
on
bad,
rice.
but just saying, you know, this is who I am. My name is Nana Manson, and I'm from Blue Gap, Arizona. I was born 1942-45. My sixth generation grandmother raised me. She went on a long walk. It was 1864. The Navajo was forced to go down to Fort Sumner, take that longest walk. She was born on the way up there, and she survived. And then coming back, she was like about 5 years old, and that's when they have that treaty signed, 1868.
So if you even spoke any Navajo at school, there would be an actual like physical punishment.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be administered by a teacher?
No.
That's kind of how it is around my house. My wife is German, and if outside of my office, if she catches me speaking English, she smacks me. She smacks me real hard. She has instituted complete and total German rule. She has built a new German. I'm not allowed to speak English.
One of them would be our dorm mate, other girls that you're going to school with or other students. When I was going to school at boarding school, I said my grandmother's name in Navajo, her Navajo name. I said that, and my dorm mate, she told me, you got to go down the canyon. And she had one of those Timeracs, and she equipped me with it. And she said, don't ever, ever say your grandmother's name. And they tried to let us forget our language, but we never did. I never did.
What was your grandmother's name in Navajo?
It means fat lady.
As illustrated by this interview, the legacy of residential schools is very much something that still lives with these tribal communities, not only through the lived experiences of elders, but also baked into the DNA of their descendants. I know epigenetics is a bit controversial, but I believe that trauma, especially when experienced collectively on a grand scale, is genetic and gets passed on to future generations, like alcohol.
Chat, do you believe in epigenetic generational trauma? Like, you know, it's kind of like a lame progressive way to put it, but the hyper-based giga esoteric trad way to put it is ancestral blood memory. They call it epigenetic ancestral trauma. We call it ancestral blood memory. And yeah, we have that. 100% we have that.
Drug addiction, or dyslexia. But whether you believe that or not, there's still a direct correlation between language death and depression rates. A study done in Alberta, Canada, where the re-education policy was more or less the same as in the US, showed that suicide rates were over 6 times higher in Native communities where less than 50% of the population spoke their ancestral language. So for many Native Americans, Biden simply acknowledging this negative canon event was a very validating gesture.
The historic trauma that the tribes have gone through, we appreciated what he did.
Just hearing him talk so detailed about what the boarding schools really were, what they all did, it brought us hope. It brought me hope that he can do something for those causes, like he can actually help us. It brings joy.
But
I wonder how many pure-blooded Native Americans we have in the country still to this day that are 100% Native. They've not done any racial intermixing, racial mingling. Probably not a lot, not a whole lot.
In attendance did not share their sentiment. Midway through Biden's speech, he was crashed by pro-Palestine protesters, who bravely crossed one colonial border to protest another.
What about the people in Gaza?
Dude, see, this is the problem, okay? Classic white man problem. Classic white man problem. He's out here going above and beyond, doing something he doesn't need to do. He's genuinely trying to be a nice, empathetic guy. Going way out of his way for people that nobody else gives a fuck about this. And he's out there, and it's not enough. And it's not enough. And it's never going to be enough. It is never enough, and it's not enough. What about this, though? Can't you just, like, enjoy the moment here? Can't we just have a nice moment talking about this for a second?
Let her talk. Let her talk.
For obvious reasons, the protester was swiftly escorted off premises by police.
Oh, no, let her go.
But Jake thought it would be a good idea to follow them out to get their perspective.
How does that relate to...
But first, a word from our sponsor.
As many of you know, one of the mission statements here at Channel 5 is to provide raw, unbiased coverage of news events as they unfold.
Just yesterday, I heard that Genocide Joe is going to be making an apology for the Indian boarding schools. It just seems ironic. While he's apologizing for that ethnic cleansing and that genocide that took place, at the same time, he's enabling a genocide in Palestine right now.
The number of civilian deaths and the number of babies killed and children being killed and women being killed and the ones who are missing under the rubble is disgusting. That our tax dollars are paying for this, all of it. For them to be supporting a right-wing extremist regime like Netanyahu's and Israel's government is like supporting Trump. It doesn't make any sense. They're Democrats. They should be better.
What do you think a public apology on the forced assimilation of Native American children going to boarding schools, how does that relate to
Well, of course. I mean, one genocide begets another genocide, right? It's white imperialism that goes back for centuries.
It's the same kind of
Yeah.
thing. The settlers took the water years ago in the Gila River Reservation.
A little known fact about the Colorado River is that America.
Hey guys, I have a very controversial take here. White people, bad. White people, bad.
American Indian tribes own rights to about a quarter of the river. In reality, for most tribes, there are only paper rights, not amounting to water they can actually use.
They had native plants that they lived on that were healthy, and they had a good water supply, and the settlers, very similar to what's happening in Israel, that the settlers stopped the water.
In the late 19th century, upstream users had diverted the Gila River to the point that it no longer flowed on the reservation.
And, you know, the reservation is still, they got the water rights back, but it takes a long time to recover from.
Can I tell you something? I see this question. Staysafe, for your next watch party, can we do a nice cozy documentary? I don't know, maybe something like Europa, The Last Battle. Can I tell you something that is going to come as is probably a surprise to some of you guys? I have never seen Europa, The Last Battle. I haven't actually watched it. I haven't seen it. Never saw it. I did see the one about Adolf Hitler, the greatest story never told. I did see that. Kathy wanted me to watch that with her. And I said, yeah, sure. All right. So I've seen that, but I haven't seen the Europa one. I haven't seen that.
From all the damage that was done.
We're less than 2 weeks away from the official election day. Like, why did he wait until now to apologize?
They are very aware that they are losing the Arab and Muslim American community as a voting sector. This current dynamic 2 weeks before the election is when you finally want to give a public apology. That screams exploitation. That screams desperation.
Why wait until now to actually come to tribal lands? You know, he hasn't done.
Because he's appealing to the very, very large Native American voting bloc. How many Native American voters are even in the fucking country? Like, it can't. Is it really that many?
That, as far as I'm aware, I mean, you can fact check me.
I think there was maybe one time before where there was a event at Grand Canyon.
Oh, when they declared the national monument. Yeah, they wheeled him out there, gave him an ice cream cone, I'm sure.
As we covered in a previous video called Havasupai Uranium Mine Protest, the last...
You know what, man? I have a feeling I'm going to find myself defending Joe Biden a lot over the next couple of years. Because I already know what's going to happen is Joe Biden is going to become this evil, loser, incompetent white man that the Democrats are going to blame all of their fucking problems on. Every problem, Joe Biden. I will be here to defend him. I will be here to defend Joe Biden every step of the way. I will not tolerate that. I will not allow it.
Last time Biden traveled to tribal lands in Arizona was to formally promise that he would protect the tribal lands around the Grand Canyon from uranium mining. A promise that he would break less than a year later, when the federal government allowed a Canadian energy corporation to evoke a gold rush legal loophole to open a potentially toxic uranium mine directly above a freshwater aquifer that provides the Havasupai tribe with all of its drinking water, leading to health concerns and panic among tribal members.
You know, I've seen a lot of livestock lose their lives. I've actually been scared to drink water, and I've been pretty much going in.
Come on, you are not having a hard time out here, buddy. Come on, how hard can it be for you, dude?
To tap water, bottled waters, and stuff myself, because I've heard people have been getting sick, and when we thought it was clean water, being laid up in the hospitals for weeks at a time due to the contaminated waters.
And at the same time, we have still political prisoners like Leonard Peltier behind bars. He was denied clemency. Biden could change that right now if he wanted to. There's still unmarked graves all over the land here. And
here's a good conversation. Now that Kamala Harris has lost, Democrats are losing control of the White House. Who is Joe Biden going to pardon? Are we going to see any crazy pardons? Who is he going to pardon?
all over the country from those
Diddy.
Indian schools.
P.
And
Diddy
it's
is
like, where are the
pardoned.
reparations? Where's the justice?
P. Diddy, you're
It just
free.
seems like
Go.
bullshit.
Despite the similarities pointed out by the Palestine protesters, many tribal members feel iffy about their presence.
I kind of get that perspective. The younger me kind of would have felt the same in a way. But as I've gotten a little bit older and kind of understand the bigger picture a little bit, I just know it's definitely not fixing everything, but for the U.S. government to say I'm sorry for anything.
On record, right?
Yeah, in front of people. Yeah, exactly. It means a little something at least. I definitely feel like my generation took a hit. It's like my grandmas and my parents kind of shied away from teaching us the culture. Not that they were not proud of, who they were. They definitely were. I always remember my great grandma.
It is kind of sad. I'll tell you a story here. I mentioned that book written by a Native American woman. She wrote it in like 1912, so over 100 years ago. This Native American, full-blooded Yurok Native American woman wrote this book. And I was super curious about this book. And so I read it. I've read the book 3 times. And then I actually went down to her village in Northern California, really, really small village in Northern California, because I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about what she was talking about. I drove, how many hours was it to get down there? Probably 10 hours to drive out to her old village in the middle of nowhere. Old, super rundown, like literal middle of fucking nowhere, the forest of Northern California. And I get out there, and I'm talking to a bunch of Native American people in this village, and they don't know anything. Like they don't know anything at all about their traditional Native culture. Because I was asking very specific things about this specific Native American culture, Yurok culture that was mentioned in this book that was written 100 years ago. And nobody that I talked to in this village really was able to answer any questions that I had. Other than this one woman, her name was Nellie. She was 94 years old. She knew. I spoke to this 94-year-old woman, Nellie. She was a full-blooded Yurok Native American woman. She knew. But none of the younger people in this village had any idea about their own culture. They had no goddamn idea.
I mean, always teaching.
It was kind of sad. It was kind of sad.
Like it was like a little secret. Like, oh, this is how you say this in Oneida or that in Oneida. Like, and she would smile. Like she was like, it was her little resistance, teaching me words. I feel like I got it a little secondhand. That's where I still feel it. Took a little while for me to kind of be a little more bold and proud about who I am. I was always the only Indian kid in whatever school I went to, and that was kind of hard. So that's
It is
where
messy. There are parts of me that honor the sentiment and the energy that comes with a public apology for those who have been waiting for millennia. And part of me is also filled with rage, therefore grief, and that is how I am processing this moment.
You know what, hoodlums? I actually have kind of some bad news. I think that story that I have from the Yurok tribe Native Americans, I think I'm not going to have it in the book about Hyperborea. I was originally thinking I would, but I think I'm not going to have it. So I don't know, maybe somewhere else I will do a write-up and kind of explain everything. But I think that story is not going to be in the Hyperborea book. I think it kind of doesn't make sense to be. Like it actually is related in some very cool ways. But I think for this book specifically, it's not going to be a good fit. But
Many tribal leaders hoped that Biden would actually take the time to meet with them during his apology visit, as the White House had
Whoa, hold up. Dude, are you a Nazi? Bro, Native American dude? Are you a fucking Nazi? What the hell is that?
Actually take the time to meet with them during his apology visit, as the White House had organized a speed dating style, dare I say,
presidential powwow,
promising dozens of tribal leaders, no more and no less than 30 seconds of Joe time. But President Biden abruptly canceled the meeting just minutes before his speech.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Woodenknife. I am the first female president of our tribe in Rosebud, South Dakota with Sicangu Nation.
Lori Walkenigo, I'm the Chief of Staff for President Kathleen Woodenknife. She is our first female president for the Rosebud Sioux tribe located in the south central part of South Dakota. We were in.
Do you think within the Native American community right now, do you think they have like an anti-race mixing agenda? Like they don't want Native American people to fuck white people or like have kids with like non-natives? Do you think there's like an effort to maintain their ethnicity? Like I would bet probably yeah. And by the way, I think they probably should. Like you don't want to see them get bred out of existence. You don't want to see that either.
Invited on Wednesday to the event with the understanding that President Woodenknife would be speaking with President Biden for 30 seconds. I didn't get to do my 30 seconds, which I really wanted to do because right now we're trying to do some things with rescinding the Medals of Honor from the massacre that occurred on our reservation many, many years ago.
The Wounded Knee Massacre. It was one of the worst atrocities against Native Americans ever. The U.S. Army rode into South Dakota and slaughtered hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children.
19 medals were handed out to soldiers for the massacre at Wounded Knee.
I think every indigenous tribe has the same needs. We need better health care.
Whoa.
We need better roads. We need assistance with our education services because for every $10 that an organization gets to run on through the BIA, when a treaty tribe contracts those 638s, we end up having to run on $4 and are expected to provide the same services that they can through the Bureau. We need housing. We're still living in substandard housing where some of our people, including my mom, is living in the transitional. Now, those transitional houses were for when they were first placed on the reservations, stating that we will be transitioning you into something more sturdy, something more warm, but we don't. We have walls that are very thin, that have very little ice, what is the word? Insulation in the housings. They're not even set on foundations. They're set on wood. So our housing is a big issue. Our education is a big issue. Our law enforcement is a big issue. Our mental health is a big issue. Our physical health through IHS. Those are issues that I think that each reservation, no matter across the nation, experience because we're not funded equitably.
Dude, white people are so fucked up for doing this. Damn. Just when I think I have reached maximum hatred for white people, I find yet another reason to hate white people. Damn.
The way that other programs are funded. And the other thing that is everywhere is the meth epidemic. We're losing so many of our families to meth.
Meth is an evil spirit. It's a brother to the suicide spirit and the alcohol. They're all.
The meth spirit is the brother of the suicide spirit and is the brother of the alcohol spirit. I bet that white people made all three of those spirits using technology.
Evil spirits that want to consume our kids. They want to take our kids from us. And so it's up to us to not let that happen.
Within our culture, we look at the next 7 generations with what's going on with the meth addictions, the meth coming onto our reservations. People come there because it's easy for them to distribute hide it, basically.
What is the Southeast Asian country that just like executes drug dealers? What is that? Is it Singapore? It's probably Singapore. Or is it the Philippines? Listen, we have Philippines. We have a big fucking problem. That's my point. I'm not saying we need to systematically execute every single person involved in drug trade, but we have a big fucking problem. We need to do something about this. And being nice about it doesn't seem to be solving any issues.
Basically, hide on the reservation because we're a sovereign nation and our laws are different within the reservation versus off the reservation. And the meth is now mixed with fentanyl, and it's a danger. I think they call it like the white China.
Fentanyl is raining on our reservation.
Marvin Weatherwax Jr. is a tribal leader here and says much of the drug activity on his reservation stems from Mexican cartels selling to community members and using their homes, often in remote areas, as distribution hubs.
But I also think that we need to be funded at the same levels because we are a sovereign nation. In fact, we were talking about that this morning when I...
The last president of the Philippines gave free guns to citizens who swore to use them to shoot drug dealers. based. I'm thinking based.
In grad school, I had mentioned that sovereignty is something that we really don't
What could
have
go
because
wrong?
we can define it, we can describe it, but it's our unicorn because does it really exist for us as a people?
Channel 5 live worldwide, Hollywood and Vine.
Fuck the authority. Channel 5 News.
Channel 50.
Oh my